It's called the All-Star Game. It's not called the Some-Star Game. It's not called the Mostly Star Game. It's called the All-Star Game. All the stars are there. Everyone's there as a star, especially for LeBron James, who's known as the king. Everyone on his team should be considered royalty. So when you look at Steph Curry, he's treated like royalty. Look at Steph sitting there at his locker, palatial locker, big locker. Everything's great because he's an all-star. So what in the what happened to Domantas Sabonis, also on LeBron's team? Look at Sabonis. What did they pull that from a set of Glee? That's like a middle school locker. That's not a grown man locker. And look at him, he's still smiling. He's happy about it. So listen, I see two options here for next year. Either get all the stars, the same palatial lockers, or change it to the Some-Star Game. Those are really your only two options when it comes to next season, Wilds.
That was excellent. Shout out to Grayson Weir putting this on Twitter. Virginia Tech. It's a home run. And they break out the home run sledgehammer. Catches a sledgehammer, blammo. And now look at the pitcher. Pitcher's like, that's what I get. That's what I deserve. The unwritten rules of baseball and college baseball are extra unwritten. In the pros, you're like, well, I had to hit him with a fastball during the sacrifice bunt. He stared at me for 2 seconds, and you're only allowed to stare 1 second. College baseball, meanwhile, it's like, well, the guy did hit a home run, throw the bat into the net, and then the team brought out their prop sledgehammer. Everyone jumped, and then they shook the ground with the power of the force, which replicated the power of the home run that the batter hit off me. So that's what I get. I guess I'll just try harder next time. So congratulations, Virginia Tech. Bravo on your home run sledgehammer.
Wilds, we got to take our little show on the road. We have taken our show on the road. This is the show. We're on the road. Back to our top story now. Dak and the Cowboys reportedly coming to terms on a 4-year deal worth up to $160 million. Just in time, too. Cowboys were coming up on today's franchise tag deadline, but they got it done, and now they can focus on the only thing left on Jerry Jones' vision board. He's got a vision board. It just says Super Bowl. Dak's brother, Tad, agrees, tweeted this, "Let's go, Dak. Time to win the Super Bowl." Brandon, we touched on this earlier. Let's dive a little deeper. Are the Cowboys now legit contenders next season once Dak is back, healthy, and all locked up?
No, I don't think they have enough. And we've been talking about these Cowboys since the Tony Romo days and Bill Parcells and Terrell Owens. Well, yeah, Wiles, because it takes a lot. We got to talk about personnel and scheme. Do you have the personnel? Do you have the scheme? Do you have the coaching? So let's look at Coach. Last year, we talked about it on this show. He literally sat in the barn in Appleton, Wisconsin, and looked at all of the things that he was doing in Green Bay and all the things and the trends and the fads that were happening in the NFL. And then he came out and he was doing the same exact thing in Dallas that he was doing in Wisconsin with Aaron Rodgers. So if you go like this, okay, in his offense, that means spider. What does that mean? What does spider mean? This Z receiver, like Odell Beckham Jr. position, he's going to come in motion, and then he's going to run a 5-yard hitch. But then if they go spider web, then that means he can run a double move off of that. You go to the New York Giants, Coach McAdoo. The reason why I know this offense because I was in it. And we literally did the same thing that they were doing in Green Bay. So the hand signals, the scheme, nothing changed. So I don't know if I don't believe in Coach McCarthy. I wouldn't say I don't know. I don't believe in it. Then you break down the offensive side. Look, Dak Prescott, he was lighting it up before he got injured, but there was too many issues. So they do have the personnel, but I'm not so sure about the scheme. You got Zeke, you got Amari, you got Michael Gallup, you have the young kid, CD Lamb, and then the offensive line. You got Martin, you got Collins. I mean, you go on and on, you know, how talented they are on that side. But then the defensive side, who do they have? What's their identity? Dan Quinn coming in from the Atlanta Falcons head coach, now the defensive coordinator in Dallas. Like, he has his work to do to replace Coach Mike Nolan. This was a league worst defense. Like, let's look at the stats really quick. You can't give up 30 points a game and think that you're going to be a contender. You can't do it. And then the #1 one thing. You always got to win the trenches first. How are you giving up so many yards on the ground? When we look at this and we're sitting in our meeting rooms on Monday, the day after the game, or on Wednesday breaking down, the footage and what we need to do, the first thing we talk about is that third stat is rushing yards per game and how much we're getting and how much we're allowing. If you're last in the league, that means you're soft. That means that you don't have it. And that sets the tone for everybody in the organization. So they need to clean this up if they want to talk about being a contender, Nick. They just don't have it right now. I love Dak. I love what he's doing now that he's rehabbing. But at the end of the day, this defense is a liability.
All right, can we show everyone on camera for a moment? Because I am legitimately shocked by Brandon's answer. Great. Because I really thought, and I try to be prepared, Brandon, I really thought you were going to say they're going to the Super Bowl because they remind me so much of your beloved Brooklyn Nets. All offense, no defense, and we don't talk about defense till mid-season on this show. So who cares? Yeah, listen, do they have a defense? No, score, 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 score. No, in seriousness, Brandon is right. This is a one-way team. And I would argue in the NBA and the NFL, but we all can agree in the NFL that don't work. And the Cowboys, everybody knows their stars. Unfortunately, all those stars play on offense. On their defensive line, they have one known quantity. The guy who was in that graphic, DeMarcus Lawrence. He's a good, not great player who is paid like a great player, but he's fine. On their second level of defense, the linebacker, they tried to recreate what the Bucs successfully created in Devin White and Levante David with Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch. Unfortunately, Jalen Smith last year had a bit of a down year after getting the massive contract, and Leighton Vander Esch has not been able to stay healthy. And their secondary, I don't know if it's fair to say it's the worst in football, but it is the cheapest in football. I couldn't believe it when I looked into it this morning. They have one player in their entire secondary that makes more than $1.4 million. And it's Anthony Brown, who makes $6 million bucks. They haven't invested in it. In the last 8 years, they have spent one top 50 pick on a corner or a safety. And it was Byron Jones, who's awesome, and they let him walk, and now he plays in Miami. So
it's a pass-happy league, Nick.
It's exactly right. So that's the problem. You have one reliable pass rusher who's hit and miss a bit in DeMarcus Lawrence. You have the cheapest secondary in football. Now, they spent some draft picks on it last year, mid-round picks. Maybe those guys maybe those guys get better. Maybe Dan Quinn's a huge upgrade. But as we sit here today, Wilds, to me, they are clearly the favorites in the NFC East. But they cannot be considered Super Bowl contenders when they have that bad of a secondary and that average at best of a defense.
Okay. You picked them to go to the Super Bowl or win the Super Bowl last year?
No, go to the Super Bowl.
To go or win? To go to the Super Bowl. So now that Mike Nolan's out and Dan Quinn is in, don't you think that the offense will be so powerful that they can run almost, and this is a little bit of a funky metaphor, like Seattle's game plan? Like, look, our defense isn't great, but we're going to let Dak cook. But Brandon, just let Dak cook and win some games. Like, they started off slow last year because the defense was so bad. It didn't matter if you had Anthony Bourdain cooking. Like, you couldn't get anything rolling. When you gave up 422 yards to the Rams, they get 570 to the Falcons, and they won the game. Then Russ threw for 5 touchdowns. They lost. And Baker put up 49 points and 500 yards. But if the defense just gets a little bit better, let's say, and this is very kind, although it sounds mean, what if it moves from atrocious to bad? You know they're going to win the division, get into the playoffs, and make some noise. That's all I'm saying. Just Dan Quinn needs to go, like, let's have a bad defense, guys. That will be great. Brandon, do you buy that theory?
I don't buy it. And every year is different. But think about this. That offense, they were putting up 497 yards a game. but they were still losing. Why? Because of those stats that we threw up on the defensive side. So the defense was giving up more on the other side of the ball to the opposing team. But then you look at what the offense was doing. What were they doing wrong? Zeke was putting the ball on the ground like once or twice a game. Yep. And you had your quarterback in 6 games, Dak, he was lighting it up, but he threw 4 picks in 6 games. And you had wide receivers putting the ball on the turf. So if you're going to play that way, then you have to be a smart team. You have to understand situational football, and you cannot hurt yourself. You can't have pre-snap penalties. You can't jump off sides. You can't have turnovers. You absolutely can't do it. You got to play a perfect game, and they're not built that way. Maybe they learned a lot this year, and they'll correct those mistakes because they are correctable, but they have to play a damn near perfect game with that type of defense.
And so a couple things, though, on the defensive side. One is they have not invested the draft capital as far as premier picks on the positions of weakness to where you can say, well, they weren't good last year, but they have these blue chip players that we expect to take a big leap. At least I can't do that. Now, maybe, and I can't remember his name. Their second-round pick, the kid from Alabama, who's a corner, maybe he takes a big leap. Diggs, I forget his last